how to block. Blocking, or rather defense, is a rather expansive subject and worthy of a small book in and of itself. However, I want to talk to you about the principles of hard and soft, use a little physics. The idea behind blocking is that you are stopping an incoming force or moving an incoming force. Now, let's backtrack a moment. The term blocking is kind of a misnomer. Blocking itself really means stopping something from moving. Most blocks that you see in martial arts systems, including Western styles, boxing, even wrestling, there is blocking and grappling. So of course of a different nature. Weapon styles. Most blocks are deflections or redirections. They're not actually mechanical blocking. We will generally use the term blocking because it's simple, it's a frame of reference that everybody understands, but I just want you to understand that the term blocking is actually kind of inaccurate. But when talking defense, you've got a basic breakdown of hard and soft. Hard ones, let's use karate as an example, are concussive, almost attacking the attack from an exterior or an interior angle. Very infrequently do you ever do like they do in many cartoons or bad movies and just shield yourself and cover. Covering, of course, is another kind. Covering is kind of a last ditch, didn't see it coming soon enough, and oh shit, just gotta cover my head or cover my body. I've blocked many side kicks that I didn't see coming with just a simple curl up. Completely saves my ribs with a bruise on the bicep sometimes. But you've got covering, you've got concussive hard blocking. You've got just absorbing type blocks. Absorbing type blocks are the ones where you meet them head on. In Savate they use the catch. You're not really absorbing even in the catch. The catch is actually very soft. So that's a bad example. But it's meeting the force head on. You're not actually trying to stop it with the catch. The catch is really more for timing. But a good example would be like an X block that's not trying to trap something, but something that's just held close, or a V-type formation, a covering type thing. These are generally absorbing type blocks. They cost the most because you have to absorb all that force. Then there are the hard blocks. We're going to just descend in order from hardest to softest. The hard blocks, forearm blocks, hard pushing blocks, elbows. You see a lot of elbows in South Asian and South Pacific styles. Hard blocks, knee blocks, shin blocks. A lot of these hard blocks are dual purpose. The defense is meant to not only save you, but to actually damage your opponent. It's a good idea, but under high pressure, high stress, they're rarely used. You can see that frequently in the example of competitive fighting. Competitive fighting has very, very few hard blocks ever thrown. And this simply because the energy and the tension required is just a bit on the slow side for a high stress situation. It's not that you can't train them highly and well, I'm just saying that the cost is a little higher. Obviously not as high as the cover, but the cover is relatively simple. It's economical in terms of your nervous system, and it's a natural instinct to just cover with an incoming force. So even though it's physically costly, it is energetically quite simple, quite saving. Hard blocks are energetically costly because you're exerting quite a bit of force, and they're also costly because that concussive nature over and over and over again on your bones is, can be quite damaging, especially without proper conditioning. Then you come into your soft category of blocks. We'll bring back the catch from Savate. It's a timing thing. It's not even a block. It's just kind of a, oh, here's a new target. Here's a new target. Here's a new target. Now I've got your timing pattern down. Here's a new target. Now I strike you. You know, there's the parry or the pak sao from Wing Chun. You've got circling hands. Sabat uses it. Wing Chun uses it. Many Chinese styles use it. We even used it a little bit in Shaolin Kempo. Then you've got, you know, inside to outside, Tan Sao, spreading hand. You've got Bong Sao. This seems fairly unique to Wing Chun in my experience, though I am certain that a few other Chinese styles have used it. I've not seen it in Japanese style yet, but an inverted elbow block is useful. It's actually very useful. These are softer blocks. They're meant to redirect. They're not meant to meet the force head on. They're meant to come in at an angle, or in some cases behind the force, and guide it off of your target, or off of their target. So, dealing with that, I want to throw an analogy at you. And I want you to start thinking about the energy and physical cost versus benefit of these blocks. The brakes on your car go side to side, right? Well, the shoe brakes and then of course the drum brakes on the back are kind of going on the sides, but it's not fighting the rotation of the wheel. It's simply providing friction. Now granted, nowadays we have anti-lock brakes and they kind of buffet it repeatedly to add a gradual amount of friction until you come to a complete stop. But think, with the rotation of the tire, if our brakes came in and clamped down to stop that rotation dead in its track, like, you know, like a chalk block, bah! Well, first of all, you'd probably end up, you know, nosediving or entirely flipping your vehicle every time. But even let's say we don't do that. You do that, do you realize how much meeting that force head-on costs? Let's use a little physics. Force equals mass times acceleration, correct? And linear force. If a force is coming this way and a force comes perpendicularly up, the perpendicular force does not affect the original energy this way at all. It just changes the trajectory if they meet. It's basic physics. So, if I meet this way, force is multiplied. If I meet this way, force is fundamentally negligible. All I'm doing is changing trajectory. Costs much, much, much less. Depending on the size of the weapon and the target, or the object in motion and the object in opposition, you could have targeting problems. Happens all the time. A fist is very small compared to, say, an entire forearm. It's easier to block an elbow than it is to block a punch. But, sorry if the thing's moving, my dog is playing with a piece of leather. I'm going to move this just a bit. Thank you. And so, okay. Cost, benefit, force. If you're going to meet something head-on, it's going to cost you a lot. Think of how strong and how massive something would have to be to stop a force. If force equals mass times acceleration, you've got a certain mass going at a certain speed here, and then you've got this other thing. Sorry, my dog keeps bumping the tripod. You've got this other thing that is trying to stop this force. And when it does that, if it's not massive enough, or if it's not going at an acceptable speed, it's going to get plowed. You have to have a lot of opposing force to meet something head-on. To redirect it, guide it away, to use softer energy, doesn't take near as much force. So if a punch is coming, I can tap it out of the way. All I have to do is overcome the mass at that point, not the acceleration. And overcoming the mass is fairly easy when it's not so anchored. You know, how hard is it to tip over, you know, a 200-pound bookcase? It's really not that hard, because you're not trying to lift up a 200-pound bookcase. You're not trying to press the 200-pound bookcase. You're just trying to tip it over. Its mass is going towards, you know, gravity. Its direction is gravity. And you come in behind it, go, and it falls over with relative ease. All you're doing is overcoming its mass, and really not even overcoming its mass. You're overcoming its center of gravity and base relationship, which doesn't really take a lot. It doesn't take a lot of energy at all. So I want you to think about that. And if the hard blocks, the hard defenses, boom, are more costly on energy and quite a bit slower, then you may consider changing up your style, or at least intermixing in softer type blocks or defenses. Just start thinking about this. Soft versus hard. Start thinking about the energy. Start thinking about, you know, use the analogy of the wheel. Do you really want to have to work up to be so strong to overcome every single force head on, or do you want to be smarter and, you know, overcome the force with as little effort as possible? Ideally both, right? You know, I like being strong, I like being smart. I'm a little bit of both. I want to be a lot of both, but if I had to choose one, I think I'd end up having to choose smart. It just makes more sense. Till next time, good journey.